So, Brandon, let's talk ticket sales. What are big takeaways you've seen right now between the difference in the way WWE and AEW tickets are moving at the moment?
Well, there's been, I think TV ratings and ticket sales for WWE have done pretty well. There's been a pent up demand that exceeded my maybe cynical expectations. It was really strong for WWE at first. They did 14,000 people in Houston for the first SmackDown. That was a sellout. I mean, it's not been sellouts recently, but it's been okay. It's been fairly strong compared to I think of pre-pandemic when there was a multi-year decline in ticket sales. But it's hard to say right now. But we do have one direct comparison between AEW and WWE right now. Is their UBS debuts in they're doing Raw in late November and Dynamite is happening in the same building in early December. And right now AEW is well ahead of Raw, but we'll see how that shakes out when it comes time to do those shows.
So you say that, but what are the ticket prices? Do they both have comparable ticket prices?
That's a good question. There's a great resource called WrestleTix that follows this stuff really closely, and I've talked to the person behind WrestleTix quite a bit, and he's using a script to count the dots on Ticketmaster. It's most of these events are through Ticketmaster, and some of them through other outlets. But he's counting the dots. But ticket prices, say for the Madison Square Garden SmackDown that they did a couple weeks ago, were really high, and I believe those are the highest ticket prices that we've seen, maybe with the exception of SummerSlam. But that was, if you compare, say, the Arthur Ashe show that obviously had a higher attendance versus the Madison Square Garden that had a lower attendance, but I think the WWE show at Madison Square Garden probably had a higher gate just by virtue of the ticket sales being quite high.
And they have a deal, like at least they used to. I don't know if things changed when New Japan got into MSG. I don't know if that changed the relationship between WWE and MSG, but man, in the early 90s when I first started there, back then it cost like $200,000 just to open the doors at MSG.
I understand that there's a union involved, and so it's very expensive to run Madison Square Garden, and that's why we rarely see WWE run TV at Madison Square Garden. SmackDown that just happened is the big exception. But it's mostly when they go to New York City, they've been running Barclays Center in Brooklyn.
Right.
But yeah, I've heard it's very expensive. So you can see why that maybe justifying the higher ticket prices, if they were going to make some money there, they had to be pretty high.
Oh yeah.
So what are you with everything going on right now, Brandon? We hear a lot about numbers, viewership, ticket numbers. Do you think that all of this attention on the pro wrestling business, is any part of this bad for WWE, or is all of this just good for everybody? Everything going on right now with the competition and everything going on in wrestling.
I think it's WWE's popularity and a lot of their metrics since the return to touring have been pretty strong. And that, I think that's also the time where AEW has been doing better too. I've seen a couple of articles about like, is this the next boom period? Is the business heating up? I'm kind of skeptical that it's really heating up into a boom period, but there's been a rise in interest with the return to fans. It's not been that much fun to watch wrestling with no fans for a year and a half or so. So it's been a relief to see everything back. And I find it's exciting to see what AEW is going to evolve into in this environment where now there's actual fans, and it's kind of easier to get stars over when you got actual people to react to them organically. But WWE's doing real well. Their TV ratings in a lot of year-over-year comparisons for Raw and SmackDown are higher than they were last year. And, we're doing comparisons to now like 2020, where part of this is in the PC era, part of it's in the early Thunderdome era, but their ratings are pretty strong and stronger than I thought they were going to be for this long. I figured, you get a short-term boost in TV ratings because people are excited to see what it's like back in arenas again, and then it would level off, but it really hasn't. Raw and SmackDown have done significantly better than they were doing in the final days of the Thunderdome for sure. And their attendance is strong. So, from an overall financial point of view, of course, WWE is more profitable now than ever, even adjusting for inflation, just because of the nature of the media environment that they're in, which is driving huge TV rights fees for them. But no, the business is pretty healthy, and it's an exciting time, I think, to be a wrestling fan and to be a wrestler.
Hey, Brandon, and Nick, when you were asking about, talking about the boom period, like, is this a wrestling boom? And like, when you compare it to the late 90s boom, like things just boom, like things just heated up so quick back then. And like, like if you compare right now to then, I don't think it's a fair comparison, but like it seems to me like it's like a boom is happening. It's just it's a lot slower, a lot more gradual rise, you know? And I think that's probably better, man. Like when you go up that fast, you usually come down that fast too.
So with you, Sean, do you think that boom started with the Outsiders? Is that when the boom began for you? You think when Scott and Kev decided
Yes.
to yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because
that was when Scott showed up on Nitro, that to me, that was the beginning of that.
Because how long had Nitro been on TV at that point? Was it a year and a half? Like how long had Nitro been on TV before the Scott Kev moment happened? I'm trying to think that. Maybe you know, Brandon.
So maybe it was
less than a year.
Was it less than a year?
September 1995 is when Nitro debuts, and Scott Hall comes out on Nitro like May 96, right?
Yeah, because like what I'm getting at is like you can have that competition, but it just takes the right thing, right? You know, I think a lot of people thought Punk was going to be that thing, but how has the Punk bump been, in your opinion, Brandon? Have we seen a real increase for AEW with CM Punk coming in?
Yeah, we've seen an increase at least in the short term. In the short term, on the TV ratings were huge. The second Rampage did a huge rating. The first Dynamite with him did a pretty big rating, and I think there's a sustained increase in Dynamite ratings, partly because he's there. There's kind of a tandem effect here. They've debuted Punk, and then they debuted Bryan and Adam Cole. So there's a lot of big things happening in succession here. So I think that's all sort of an effect in concert. But you know, according to Chris Harrington on Twitter a week or two ago, he said, yeah, there's at least 6 categories. He says that CM Punk is positively affecting. And you know, we had the pay-per-view. The pay-per-view is reportedly over 200,000 buys, and that's according to Tony Khan. That's by far their biggest ever, by probably 50,000 or so. Wow. So I think they're doing well. I think like if we think about it in terms of how does it compare to other booms or increases in business in history, I think it's maybe more comparable. Maybe both W and AEW here, but more comparable to just the rise that we've seen in New Japan. Not even thinking globally, but at least domestically since like 2012 to the end of the decade, where they just sort of gradually rose up. And Gato became the booker, and Hiroshi Tanahashi became a big star that carried the company, and they got Okada in there and created another star. It wasn't a huge explosion of business from one year to the next, but it was a gradual increase and collection of stars. So I think I don't know who the stars are right now, but that in terms of a trend, that's more what it feels like.